Hey guys, welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. On today's gun store vlog, I'm going to talk about the 5 key indicators that tell me that the pricing on firearms is about to drop. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Alright guys, so about a month or two ago I was on a live stream with 2A and we had actually been speculating about this very topic, and a month or two ago we started noticing that the pricing on firearms was starting to come down. And over the past month or two, I've been noticing that the pricing on firearms continues to fall. I've been in this business now for about 8 years, so as I I run my website, WeBuyGuns.com, I make offers on firearms, I go check the market on the used pricing of guns, and I have noticed that the pricing has been steadily dropping. I think it's going to continue to drop, and let's go ahead and talk about the reasons why. So first, when I do these videos about a market analysis, the number one place I like to start is with the NICS criminal background check data. Now, in the purchasing space of firearms in the United States, you do not have to conduct a NICS background check in the event of a private sale. But if you're going to purchase a firearm from a dealer, you will go through a NICS background check. Now that information is compiled and you can compare that month over month and year over year. I have a print off and I'll bring this up on the screen for you guys. But if we look in last month, that's February, and this is compiled about a month in arrears. So in February, we were at 2.55 million background checks. Now that is actually down from January, which was 2.59 million. An interesting thing here to look at is if we look at 2022 compared to 2021, just a year ago, January of 2021, we were at 4.3 million background checks. Just this past January, we were at 2.5. So massive drop in the amount of background checks, which is an obvious correlation to a drop in demand. Now, if we take 2019 levels, so again, back in February, just this past February, we did 2.5 million background checks nationwide. That compares to about the national average for background checks conducted across the country in 2019. So by all accounts, looking at a couple months, I know this is just 2 data points, we are returning to pre-pandemic 2019 levels of background checks, which is a huge indication that we are returning back to that previous level of demand we had prior to the pandemic. Keep in mind, that is near the end of President Trump's term, or single term in office, which actually after he took office in 2016, we saw a drastic drop in demand of about 33%, as what was experienced formerly for the 8 years under then President Obama. So returning back to those same numbers in the NICS data tells me that we are back to actually pretty low levels of demand. The pendulum does swing both ways. Always when you have heightened exuberance in the marketplace, which is a little bit unusual and unparalleled, brought on by a black swan event, after the consumer fatigue sets in, demand drops, it always swings back and corrects the other way. So going from that heightened level, again, just a year ago, 4.3 million down to 2.5, that indicates to me that demand has actually pretty well plummeted from where it was even just a year ago. Now, second thing is the dynamic between the cost of goods manufacturing and the demand for that good. And the dynamic for that is definitely changing. There is the number one baseline that sets the price of any commodity, and that is the cost of manufacturing that good. It's personnel, logistics, transportation, material costs. Now, when those are at a baseline, you can only sell that product at about a slight margin above that, large enough to keep positive cash flow and pay all of your expenses. When you start having to sell that commodity below your cost, eventually that will lead to bankruptcy. Some companies do that as a temporary strategy to get rid of excess product or to try and squeeze a competitor out of the market. But if you do that long term and you're unable to keep your sales price above your cost, long term that puts you out of business. You have to stay up here. Now, above this line, demand is going to dictate where the pricing goes beyond that. Now, after we saw the increase in demand in the beginning of 2020 because of the onset of the pandemic, we saw demand come way up here. The pricing for 9mm ammunition, $50, $60 a box, standard basic AR-15s, over $1,000 a unit. That was brought on strictly by demand, not an increase in the cost of the good. Now, as the demand started coming down over the past couple of years, the cost of manufacturing started coming up. We saw this with inflation, raising in fuel prices, raising in the wages of personnel, material costs, and getting that stuff imported from overseas, different steel, things like that. That was causing the baseline price to come up as demand came down, and we sort of hit equilibrium about middle of last year, where you start seeing 9mm equalize around $20 a box, which is better than $40 or $50 a box, but not where it was in 2019 at about $10 to $12 a box, because the cost of those goods of manufacturing came up. Now, as you start to see people leave the market, you're going to start seeing fewer units needing to be produced by companies like Glock or Ruger, starting to lay off personnel, starting to manufacture less material. And as that tends to happen, the cost of those goods start to come down a little bit. Now, you always have a general increase brought on by inflation. I'm not an economist, but this is just basic economics. So the pricing will never, ever be down as where it was in 2019 or 1980 or 1940, but it will come down from where it was brought on by unusual amounts of demand and inflation. Now, the third thing is going to be the change in inflation. So we have seen huge levels of inflation this year, actually over the past couple years, especially this year. But as of this month, the Federal Reserve has stopped printing money, and they are taking money out of circulation. And as a result, interest rates are starting to increase, which is going to reduce business spending and expansion and consumer spending as well. This is going to contract the economy. Some economists even speculate this may lead into a recession. Now, as other commodity prices or goods start going up, we're seeing a huge increase in the price of fuel. People are, some places in the country, paying upwards of $9 a gallon. Around here, it's been around $4 a gallon. That's causing logistics for other businesses, grocery stores and the food chain and things like that. The cost of those fuel surcharges being tacked on for logistics, shipping, and transportation is causing the price of those goods to go up. Now, a firearm is a commodity. It is a discretionary income sort of item past your first one. I think your first one like your first handgun, maybe your first shotgun, your first rifle, those are necessities in a lot of different scenarios. But when you get into your 15th or your 16th or your 20th, those are really just add-ons to a collection or to an enthusiast who wants to try different things at the range. It's no longer a necessity as compared to a broken dishwasher or food to put on your table. Beyond that first one you might need for defense or something like that, especially if you are in a bad area or your safety is in any type of imminent threat. Now, as people start to need to free up cash to get things that are raising in price, again, fuel or household items that need repair, it is typically those firearms, those excess firearms, that tend to make their way onto the used market. And you have all these first-time buyers we saw in 2020 and 2021 who may not see an interest for those firearms, who may put all those firearms back into the market. Now, as you start to see an increase in the supply of those used firearms, whether or not the pricing of the new inventory is coming down fast enough, as we start to see a surge in supply of used firearms, and I'm starting to see that through my website and things as well, like a much higher velocity of interest in people selling those items. The pricing will ultimately come down on those offers because there's going to be an abundance of supply in the market compared to the very quickly dropping demand that, of course, we're seeing in places like the background checks. Number 4 is seasonality. So seasonality does exist in the firearms market. Typically, your warmer months are slow, that's spring and summer, and your colder months, your winter and fall, are the busy season for us. Now, in 2020 and 2021, we did not see any seasonality. I saw a little bit of seasonality at the tail end of 2021, but now moving into the spring, I am experiencing the typical seasonality changes that we have experienced in the market since I've been in business in 2013 all the way up to 2019. Then seasonality disappeared in 2020 and 21 because of the insane levels of demand. Going back to a standard sort of roadmap for a year of operations with seasonality, getting back to that type of feel tells me that the market has drastically cooled off and it's returned to normal. Now, if the market does return to normal, I do think that manufacturers are going to start producing a lot less inventory because there's going to be a lot less demand for it out to the final end, like the gun stores like me. Wholesalers are going to need to get rid of all that excess inventory that they might have as well. For example, I just had a phone call with one of my distributors yesterday who had 9mm to sell. We always ask, how much do you have available? And for the first time in 2 years, he said, you can have as much as you want. If I wanted 500 rounds of 9mm, 1,000 rounds of 9mm, whatever, I should say cases or boxes, not rounds, boxes. If I wanted 500 boxes of 9mm, I could have ordered it. That is the first time I have been unrestricted from my order of at least 9mm ammunition since the pandemic hit in February. You know, the craziness started about February, March of 2020. Being able to just order as much 9 as I want. Now the pricing is still up and we would still have to retail it at about $20 a box. But first you have to hit an overabundance of supply before pricing will come down. And that was a big indicator to me that, wow, the distribution channels are full if they're offering a lowly gun store like me all the 9mm I want to sell. Also, a lot of people interested in weird off-caliber things like 45-70, 45 Colt. A lot of the ammo manufacturers have neglected those calibers, focusing on the NATO cartridges. Now that it looks like the supply of that is pretty well filled and stocked with a lot of the wholesalers, I see them probably starting to revert back to the manufacturer of those other unique cartridges. That's just a guess in my opinion. I have really no real insight into the ammo manufacturing part of the industry to tell you that for sure. Fifth and final point would be consumer fatigue and market saturation. Now we have experienced, at least in the past 10 to 20 years, 3 major booms in demand. We saw one in 2008 after President Obama took office. There was a huge spike in demand then. We saw that in 2012 to 2013 when President Obama takes a second term in office, and that's just prior to or just after the Sandy Hook shooting tragedy. We saw a huge spike in demand there. Now in both cases, after a huge spike in demand, you always see a massive contraction. It is a pendulum that swings one way in a very extreme case. For a black swan event, it always overcorrects by swinging far to the other side. That happens every time. I don't think that that will be an exception this time as well. You have people out there over a period of 2 years, especially first-time buyers, buying as much as they can, as quickly as they can at very high prices. That's when prices on stuff starts to come down, availability of everything is there. I think people are going to, having experienced 2 years of the consumer fatigue of buying a lot of things, stuffing their gun safes with the firearms that they want, everybody's pretty well set. Now that firearms are there and there's no risk of walking into a gun store and seeing empty shelves here in the immediate, kind of the near future, that tends to be a time when people stop buying and you see a massive lack in demand and the gun stores start to fill back up again. That is exactly what we saw after the 2020 election, not 2020, 2016 election, when President Trump had won. We saw a massive hole blown in demand because of that 8 years of all the purchasing everybody had done. Everybody thought, here is a pro-2A president. We can sit back and relax. And me as a gun store owner, I will tell you, like overnight, just like demand just like bottomed out. Nobody was in buying anything. And I think we are headed for that again soon. Anyway, guys, those are my 5 reasons for why I think pricing on firearms is about to start dropping pretty significantly here in the future. If you agree or disagree with me, please let me know down in the comment section. I would be happy to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by hitting that like button. Please also consider subscribing to this channel and hit that bell notification button so you are aware when I am posting new content. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you off there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.